Ask the Podcast Coach for March 2nd, 2024.
Let's get ready to podcast.
There it is. It's that music that means it's Saturday morning. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, where you get your podcast questions answered live. I'm Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, and joining me right over there is the one and only Jim Cullison from theaverageguy.tv. How's it going, Jim?
Greetings, Dave. Happy Saturday morning to you. Always good to be back on Ask the Podcast Coach. And we have some tree trimmers in the yard this morning. So if the lights go out, I have a backup so I can keep podcasting. The lights might go out, so I might go in the dark. So we'll just see how they're cutting over the power line. So we'll see. This is one of those.
Yeah.
But it's the reason I have a battery backup. So hopefully we'll be good for the next 90 minutes or so.
I'm just waiting for like a branch to come falling, through the roof behind you. That would be always fun.
Yeah, or through the roof. That wouldn't be good. He's mostly over. I was helping the early part of the morning. He's mostly over the roof or away from the roof now. So I think we're going to be in good shape.
Okay. Excellent. Well, and of course, in the event that a branch comes through the window, there's an easy way to chill out while that's happening. And that, of course, is with a little cup of Java, courtesy of our friend Mark over at podcastbranding.co. Hey, look, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see there's the artwork for Ask the Podcast Coach for the School of Podcasting and the Podcast Rodeo Show. And here's what's cool about Mark. He makes pretty stuff. Doesn't matter if it's your artwork, your whole website, maybe it's just a PDF. He makes it look good. And I ordered a new piece of artwork for yourpodcastwebsite.com that'll be coming later. And we sat down, we had our little meeting to kind of explain it. And I wasn't in a giant hurry, but I just emailed him and said, hey, do you need anything else from me? And he's like, nope. He goes, this one's kind of tricky. I'm still working on a couple of things. So he's just not a template guy that's just going to slap something together and go, here you go. So if, you're looking for something to look really good, this is the place to go. It really is. Podcastbranding.co. Mark is an awesome guy, and he takes care of you. Podcastbranding.co.
And of course, big thanks to our good friend Dan Lefebvre over there, based on a true story at basedonatruestorypodcast.com. This week, the three they're covering: The Crucible, Waco, and Seabiscuit. Did you ever see Seabiscuit? You ever watch that movie?
That movie always makes me hungry every time I hear about that movie. I know it was a horse. Didn't he win like the Triple Crown or something? Or something
like that. Yeah. Craig Ferguson made a whole shtick out of it on a show, and he had a horse that would run around dancing. Anyways, it's available now, based on a true story. Is it or is it not based on a true story? Check it out today, based on a true story podcast.com. Dan, thanks for your sponsorship.
Well, that has me intrigued because it's based on a true story because there really was a horse named Seabiscuit. But now the question is, how much of that was them making up the behind the scenes stuff about Seabiscuit?
Well, let's just compare and contrast, right? Like Waco, a very intense situation, right?
It's a comedy.
Would open itself up to a good drama, or not basing it on the truth, right? One of those kinds of things. Where with Seabiscuit, maybe a boring story that needs more lift to it than it would, who knows? What you know, and I do know. You can go out and listen to the podcast right now and find out. Check it out.
This morning, I woke up. I'm going to call it. Is this explicit if I say the word boner?
You do. Probably.
Okay.
Actually, probably.
I got a nerd. I was very excited in a nerd kind of way. In fact, if you go to askthepodcastcoach.com/contest, so askthepodcastcoach.com/contest, hurry now. I did a thing on King Sumo a while ago where I gave away a microphone, and there was a fair number of entries that, like Vlad, there were a lot of Vlads and other very, shall we say, Russian sounding names. And so nothing wrong with Russian people, by the way. In the immortal words of Sting, I hope they love their children too, right? So I was like, that's odd that it seemed, I don't know that I have a ton of listeners in Russia, and it seemed out of
you think they're trying to do something nefarious with? I mean, is there a whole cartel around contests
Well,
for microphones?
yeah,
That would,
that's true. It's a
like,
whole
I
bunch of
don't what,
people. It's the black market. We got to get in on this business of the free microphone. We'll sell them on eBay. It'd be great. So that would be awesome. Anyway, so I found this tool called Gleam. I think if you go to supportthishow.com/Gleam. But here's the thing. I logged into it. Holy cow. And I wasn't sure, is this a good thing or a bad thing? Because they have all these templates and all sorts of fun stuff that you can do. And so originally, when I first looked at this, so on the screen, I've got, let's see, a 6x. So I've got at least 24 different templates I can choose from. And part of me was like, ooh, love the toys to play with. But I could also see where that would be a little bit of overwhelm. And so it's the other thing, like it's very much like if you go again, askthepodcastcoach.com/contest. By the way, you win 30 minutes of free coaching with me. And so I'm playing with this tool. But what I like about it is when I first went over, it was like $150 a month. And I was like, yeah, no. But they do have a free plan. And then if you just want the contest thing, like if you want to run a contest for a month, it's like $15. I'm like, okay, that's doable. Right now I'm using the free plan. But that's I did get a fair number of people that signed up for the free microphone. Again, a majority of them were from Russia, but it was
crazy.
Do you ever
figure out why?
Yeah,
why would they do like?
Yeah, well, I did see in this, if you upgrade to a paid plan, there is a fraud detection thing. So apparently, you can have people and even on the King Sumo one, I think they had a double opt in. So I'm not again. Look, I know this. When I was in a band, we gave away free kitchen magnets that said the Sugar Daddies. And somehow there was a Facebook group of people that love to get free stuff. And all of a sudden we get from, like sign up here, we'll mail you this. It was just a magnet. We went to Office Max back when there was an Office Max. And then I printed these. I had these super basic business cards, and it was a business card magnet. So you just stick the business card on the magnet and presto, you have a, refrigerator magnet. And all of a sudden I start sending magnets to California and Kansas City. And I'm like, look, we're in Akron, Ohio. And that's when I found out that there are people that just love free stuff. And I was like, so.
A lot of podcasters, want to give away or do the, although I do get the feeling giveaways have been dying off slowly. I'm not hearing about as many contests. Remember, it used to be, you would be like, hey, come and like it in these 5 places and sign up in these 2. And
well, that's what this thing is.
And you get chances. I don't know too many of those. I'm not seeing as many as I used to on that. And I don't know. We talked about this maybe a year ago. I think some people now, as you're trying to get them to do these things, even for a microphone. So Dave, you throw that out there. And I think a lot of folks are like, yeah, I'm not going to give you my email address, even for that.
Right.
Become such a bad spam environment for those kinds of things. People are very suspicious of like, no. And so sometimes I've heard of podcasters trying to give stuff away and nobody signs up for it.
Yeah.
They're like, nah, for $50, hey, an Amazon $50 Amazon gift card. Yeah, no, I'm not going to sign up for it. So I wonder if that's kind of, in all this stuff cycles, right? So I wonder if we're kind of at the bottom of the cycle on giveaways, or I just don't see, I don't know, maybe the chat room can chime in on this, or if you're watching it on YouTube after the fact, you can leave a comment. I don't think too many people are doing that anymore, but maybe they are. So prove me wrong, prove me right. I don't know. Leave it in the comments. Love to hear from you on that one.
Yeah, this is what it looks like. So 30 minutes of coaching, and you basically have to click here to give me your email address and first and last name. And then if you visit my YouTube page, you get an extra, whatever token towards winning. And then if you were not on the free plan, you can have things like follow the show, like you just said, follow me on LinkedIn, go to my Instagram, all these other things. And sometimes when I do see those and it's a laundry list, I'm like, yeah, I don't have a half hour to enter the contest. And that's fine. You can just give me your email address.
Yeah. And what they're trying to do. I mean, they're just trying to bolster their social numbers, right? That's what we were all trying to do during those days. But I like leaving a comment on hey, leave a comment for me on Apple or,
Right.
A review. I kind of wonder if that horse is out of the barn.
The problem with that is, right, Jim Mom 37 goes over and goes, love the show, great host. Like, okay, if they win, how do you get a hold of Jim Mom 37? That's kind of where these kind of things come into play. But hey, we got Craig over at livewellandflourish.com says that's why it's good to have a couple burner email addresses. And speaking of Craig from Live Well and Flourish, that's right, the man just published his 100th episode. So he's an awesome supporter. And it's actually his 100th episode is him kind of looking back on his 100 episodes and different things that he's learned and things like that. So check that out over at Live Well and Flourish. So Todd the Gator, I do monthly drawings for Discord community, but they are already listeners, but it's a great community builder.
Yeah, that's a good. Listen, I offered to give away some things to my Patreon subscribers, and they were like, don't burn all your money on sending me stuff. I'm going to support you on Patreon, whether you give me free stuff or not.
Yeah.
And so there was, it was, probably cost me $5 to send something to somebody, which was the average Patreon subscription. And so always appreciated the listeners kind of thinking of that. Like, don't, I gave it to you so you could do some things with your podcast, not necessarily give stuff back. It goes both ways. I think on YouTube right now, merch, shirts and hoodies and hats, like those seem to be, at least for the YouTubers I watch, those seem to be flying out the doors.
Yeah.
Right?
I was surprised because I've seen a few people add that, and I forget there's a store, there are two stores that are like approved by YouTube. But what I'm interested in is like a t-shirt is like $40. And I was like, wait, what? Like, holy cow. But I guess if you
are 60,
you're like, and I'm like, I know inflation and all, but I'm like, that's a lot for a t-shirt. And I also know that t-shirt is going to last about 5 washings and probably fall apart,
It may not. For some of those expensive ones, they may be using some quality vendors to get it done.
Yeah.
I know I watch one guy and his hoodies are dynamite. I mean, he wears them.
Yeah.
He shows people wearing them. They look great. There's a lot of in a lot of the folks, a lot of the DIY folks on YouTube that I watch, they'll throw, it's more, let's say it has a more patriotic theme. So I think some of that sells too, right? American flags and some of those kinds of things on their gear. So it is I think, I don't know, maybe we're back around to that where that kind of merch seems to be doing, seems to be doing really well.
Well, we got some comments here in the chat room. Coach Dave says, I left email services when my inbox got overrun by spam. We can whack-a-mole for only so long. One vacation break and the inbox looks like the Omaha beach on June 6, 1944. It does. They're just storming the beach. Yes.
Nice date reference. That's pretty good. Yeah.
Rich Graham says, I don't have a problem giving my email if I trust the site. Yeah. Ralph over at AskRalphPodcast.com says, I've been offering a $25 Amazon card drawing to get more email subscribers. Yep. There are those people that like, then you're getting people who don't really want your stuff. But I'm like, I still got your email. But I've had to do that sometimes. There is no $25 gift certificate. This is just me testing out Gleam. But if you want some free consulting, again, askthepodcastcoach.com/contest. Podtastic Audio, who did this month, the question of the month, which we'll probably talk about. I always get worried about doing the question of the month that nobody's going to reply. And I came very close to this time. I had a question. But Jeff C. says, merch is great if you have the community. In fact, there was a guy that I interviewed for my book, Profit from Your Podcast. And he actually, they would somehow, how you just talk and all of a sudden you invent some sort of saying, whether it's dynamite, how old is that? Or, where's the beef or whatever. And he said they would come up with something and people would just laugh. And all of a sudden it became, and this is again where the community has picked the phrase. Like you can't be Pizza Hut and say nobody out pizzas the Hut. I'm still not calling Pizza Hut the Hut. It's Pizza Hut. But when your community identifies some sort of meme or saying or whatever, slap that on a t-shirt. And then what he did was he made it a limited time only. Like this thing, if you want the, whatever, happy poop Thursday or whatever it is, with some weird saying. And then the community would then design the shirt. Like he had graphic people. And this is where Adam Curry talks about time, talent, and treasure, the 3 ways your audience can promote. So like somebody would design a shirt and they'd be like, well, like, do you want a cut of the sales? Like, no, man, I'm supporting the show. And then they would make it a limited time offer. And there you go. So
can you read Gary Stockton or bring up Gary Stockton's comment? I really like watching Otis Gibbs' video, and he recently visited the factory that makes his shirts.
Oh, nice.
I bought one from him, and it included a personal note. This is what I want to talk about: a personal note in the packaging, which is I think super important. Like, you get the opportunity to put a note in. So this last week, they're not a sponsor of the show, but I drink Island coffee. Oops, I'm covering the thing. You guys know I drink Island coffee here. This is part of the deal. Chris, who's a listener, initially sent me a free pound of this thing, and I've been hooked on their green room blend ever since. So this last week, I ran out, so I ordered some more. Two more pounds came in the mail, and a note. I wish I would have brought it down with me. A sticky note from Chris said, "Jim, great seeing you. Thanks for all that." Like, I wasn't buying merch. This is a product. They have but Chris saw my name come across and left me a note. I showed my family. I was like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
That Chris would take the time. So Chris, thanks for doing that. Certainly worth a mention. But imagine from the power of putting a personal note in some of the merch that you're sending out, or when you email back somebody emails you about your show and you email them back. It's a powerful, powerful action that you can do. And I think one that's overlooked, right? It's easy.
I don't know how I found them, but there's a company called oatsovernight.com. And they give you a tumbler with your first order. You dump in 8 ounces of milk. You grab a bag of oatmeal, throw it on there, shake it up, put it in your fridge. And by the morning, you can drink your oatmeal. Now, it's a little weird. If you are texture sensitive, it may not be your jam, but they're yummy. They are darn yummy. Lots of protein, lots of fiber, blah, blah, blah. And so I ordered a big old box of it, and it's over. And I was supposed to come March 7th. And I'm like, no, I already blew through this. Send my next order. And I know it's automated, but everything looks clean and everything is super personal. A lot of pictures of people in the factory, and you feel like the people in the factory. And this was from the owners, like, hey, I just saw you ordered your second box, and I just want to say thank you so much. I'm glad you're liking the product. And I know that's automated, but it was still kind of cool. And then you go to, it's like, click here to know a little more about me. So like, all right. And this guy was like a professional poker player and was always hurried in the morning and invented this way to drink oatmeal. And it's just, the brand itself, I feel like I know the brand, and it's really cool and really slick. So yeah, those personal notes come in handy. Jeff says Ecamm just launched a new merch store and people are buying stuff like crazy. Funny how software has built a community that will purchase merch. Yeah, when I heard that on their show, I was like, I might get a little Ecamm shirt going on here. Why? Because I'm a fan. I love their product. That's another one. That's just like the Oats people. It's a cool community. And there are people over there arguing over whether or not their maple syrup pancake oatmeal really tastes like pancakes or not. But they're all like arguing over like what's the best flavor, all sorts of stuff. Jeff, I wish I asked them affiliate link for the oatmeal. I wish they had one. That was my first question. And what's weird is I liked the oatmeal before I tasted it. Now, how is that? They're like, literally, when you sign up, I love the fact that when you sign up, they're like, hey, while you're here, can you answer a couple of questions for us? And you're like, what's your age? Where do you live? Blah, blah, blah. How did you find out about us? That's always a question you want to ask people. How did you find my podcast? And then all of a sudden you get to like question number 6, and it's like, hey, are you tired of questions yet? If you are, click here. If not, click here. And so I'm like, well, that's pretty funny. All right. So you instantly get that this brand has their tongue in their cheek. They want to have a little fun. And so I said, all right, give me some more questions. It's like, wow, look at you, question master, whatever. And it was like one more question. But just the fact that there was a little tongue in their cheek, I'm like, wait, this isn't like, kind of like when Dollar Shave Club first came out. I didn't realize the owner of that, the guy that started, was a comedian, which makes sense. His brand was super funny when it first came out in all their commercials. So Coach Dave says, we use this technique when spending weeks in backcountry. Cold soaking keeps weight down. Cold soaking? Oh, must be food.
No, what you're doing. Yeah. In other words, adding, when you pack in the dry goods and then you cold soak it.
Yeah.
And that rehydrates the food. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I can send you a link to their stuff on Amazon. You can also, if you want to test it sounds like a giant commercial, but you can go to Walmart and wherever they have the oatmeal stuff, they have like a couple flavors. Like I think they have apple, cinnamon, and then they have chocolate, peanut butter, banana. And instead of pouring milk into that one, you pour water into it. So it's pre-made. And I'm like, ooh, that screams take me to podcast movement when I don't have, it's easy. I can always find water at these places. I may not be able to find milk. So that's fun. We did have a question come through. Oh, well, we'll be using the YouTube audio today as Dave looks over and realized he never started. I went to make a marker and I'm like, oh yeah, you never started that thing, that piece of equipment, the Roadcaster. Silly me. All right. So this is from Dave. He says, this question is for a webmaster. This might be, Jim, are you going to have to get your nerd on for this?
It's very possible.
Yeah. So the question is for the webmaster, is $75 for web hosting, SSL, and full cPanel for a year outrageous?
And now, he's been waiting for this. It's time for Jim to get his nerd on.
So $75 a year? No. $75 a month? Yes.
Yeah.
That's when I first read that. I thought, I think anything dollars or less is a smoking hot deal. We on Home Gadget Geeks, we talk about, Maple Grove Partners offers a plan at $10 a month, which is pretty reasonable. No, for what you're doing, especially if there's, depending on their media hosting and how that is set up and how much bandwidth you get. No, I don't think that's outrageous at all. I think that's pretty good. I think actually it's a pretty good price for $75 a year.
Yeah, I'm looking at SiteGround, which is, I use Maple Grove for the School of Podcasting, but I use SiteGround, and I did kind of get sucked in because they have a $3 a month plan, but that's for the first year. And then it goes to $17 a month. Got that second year bill. I was like, wait, what? Hold on a second.
Yeah, but that's the old come in low for a year, and then the adjust. They're hoping you don't notice the bill when that thing goes up. Yeah.
Have you seen the AI generated websites yet?
No,
there's a thing.
I imagine they could do a good job.
Well, it's interesting. I think it was ZapWP, if I remember. I'll find the website here. But you basically go in and say, I am making a restaurant with this and this. Here's my about page text. Here's this and that. And it spits out a website that you then tweak. So it's kind of like making your own template, but that's something new. Gary says, what was the price? He said $79 for the year for a website, but $129 for Evernote is outrageous, though. It is in my book. Uncle Marv says finding out how much and how long you have for storage. Yep, $75.
Well, it could be too budgety. Like in this area, to Uncle Marv's point, you could be buying so cheaply, you're getting 1/1000th of a server just because it comes up.
Yeah.
You log into the cPanel and you're able to do some things to it. Doesn't mean it can support 5 or 500 people who show up on the site. So I think you have to be careful. There is too cheap in this space.
Yeah.
There is too cheap.
I got tuned down for their affiliate thing, but it was $3 a month. And it was like always, like it wasn't a first year thing. And I was like, wait a minute, you need to stay in business. Yeah. So we have.
Listen, T-Mobile offered me home internet. Now it's wireless. I have a tower right up the street, so it's not too bad. At $50 a month, unlimited. And they were like 50 forever, kind of thing. And you're like, guys, nothing is forever. Like, let's not get carried away here on this thing. I need you to realize, at some point you're going to have to raise the price. But so far, there's been no hint of it. I think you just got to keep track of those things to make sure you're not. Someday you wake up and you've got, $1,500 in subscriptions. Dave, in the world you live in, where you're constantly testing things all the time.
Yeah.
You got to be extra vigilant about making sure you're turning on and off your subscriptions after you're done testing them. I have one I need to shut off here pretty quick. I'm not even using it anymore. So got to stay on top.
What I find out is, and Niilo, I'll get to you in just a second. We got somebody waiting, which is cool. But I have signed up for stuff, thought I liked it, buy a year of it, and then 4 months in go, yeah. And then all of a sudden $120 will come through and you're like, what is this for? And then you got to go to Google and like, I'm looking for LLC, clown fart something. Like, wait, what? Like, I can't find the invoice. I don't know what it's for. I don't know where to cancel this. So you have to kind of keep up on that. So, but we do have someone coming to the stage. So let me switch over to, oh, wait, I got to move this needs to be smoother, Dave.
Make sure the echo is not there as well.
Yes. Let me switch to the scene and we'll drag him in. There we go.
Niilo.
And
Niilo's there.
There he is, the one and only. How are you?
Hey guys.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good to see you. Welcome.
Cool. What can we help you with?
All right. Well, I'm trying to get started a little bit again with podcasting, and it just happened that my old PC died.
Oh,
like totally in midair, and I think it's a goner. And so I had this MacBook that I'm using now, MacBook Air from 2014.
Still alive.
It's still fine for.
Still alive and steaming on just fine.
For what you're doing from a podcasting perspective. I mean, that Mac could probably get you another 4 or 5 years. The video, if you did video editing, it's going to struggle a little bit. It'll still do it, but it'll struggle a little bit. But this kind of stuff, or even recording video, that Mac will probably get you another couple years. It would be good to start thinking about, okay, I know I'm going to have a replacement coming up here, and if you want to stay Mac, you could, the M2 or the M3 when it comes out, mini may be a great option. You're talking about $1,000-ish in there, USD, or you could go PC, and the PC makers right now are having trouble selling PCs because nobody's buying them. Right? We bought them all during the pandemic. We're in that magic cycle where nobody's buying them anymore. So there could be some options for you. Dave, your thoughts?
Yeah, just like you said, anything that, unless you're doing major stuff, you don't have to, because so much stuff we do, like, here I'm using Ecamm, but before I used Ecamm, I used StreamYard. And so all that processing is via your internet speed, and then you're using their service online. So a lot of the stuff that you use, like I just started using Resound to edit this show because it does a really good job of finding the ums and bringing them back. So again, there's another web-based kind of tool that doesn't need a huge amount of power to get through. But did it give you any warning before it died? No, man.
No, nothing. I was just, I wasn't doing anything special at all. Just browsing the web, basically, and all of a sudden, poof, gone, everything. I'm not even sure if it's completely gone, but I think so. But anyways, right now, I'll stick to the good old MacBook Air. And I do have another Mac, as it happens, like one that I got from my dear wife, also from 2014, I believe, iMac with the really great 27-inch. 27. What are those numbers? I don't know. 27
sounds about right.
Green.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. So that's fine. But what I'm trying to do now is to record. Well, at least try to record a future podcast episode using this good old MacBook Air and Audacity. And I wonder if it's possible to, just theoretically speaking, add a guest that's participating using Streamcast from the MacBook side, and another guest that's coming in through the phone into the P4. So I would like to record the works. Yep. I would like to record the works using the the same MacBook Air, but I think there are it's a little bit difficult to do this, especially in the Apple world, if you want to get the computer audio.
I forget the
into
name
mix.
of there's a Mac program, Audio Hijack Pro. Yeah.
I was
Or
thinking
Soundflower, but both those I hear that it gives you much more routing on send this input to this kind of thing. So yeah, and I know especially on one computer having all those inputs go into, in this case, say Audacity, and then while you're recording it, send audio from that same computer back to the guest and the host. That can be a nightmare. That's where I would record it on the P4 because that's easy. You're on channel 1.
Yeah. I was just thinking that it would be great to backup of everything in the MacBook Air, but I know it might be hairy.
Yeah. So
Gary mentions loopback too. I think that's another loopback on the Mac. Yep.
Yep. Okay. But theoretically it should be possible
100%
to get the works
100%.
recorded.
Yeah, you should be
using the same Mac.
Yeah. I know Chris, who works in a lot more video than I do, says that basically a MacBook Air, depending on if you're doing it on the machine, could be, depending on it. He says any video will be a trudge with MacBook Air. Yeah.
Editing is Niilo. Editing will be where you struggle, right? But you're just doing audio, right?
I don't. Yeah. Editing is a completely different story. But I was just thinking
you'll be fine on the recording side.
The word I haven't used in a long time, mix minus, can be a pain. Yeah. That's the tricky part.
P4 will take care of large chunks of that for you. So
huge.
You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. Excellent. Anything else we can help you with?
All right. I'm fine with this. Good advice. And I don't even think that I'll actually need to get everything, including this StreamYard stuff, into the backup recording. But it's good to know.
Yeah. And StreamYard can record separate tracks. And so does Ecamm since you're on a Mac. So, and then Chris says, mix minus should be our new drinking game. Exactly.
We don't say it very much.
No, that's why that way we wouldn't be quite so hammered when the show's over. Yeah. Excellent. All right, my man. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks, friend. Good seeing you. Thanks for coming in. You bet.
Thanks a lot,
good to see you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Good one.
And you can do that too by just going to askthepodcastcoach.com/question and ask your question live. That's always fun. I've got that open now so I can see when people pop in. We did have somebody, speaking of StreamYard, Bred to Perfection with Kenny Troiano. Says, this is a question for anybody here. Have you been having problems with StreamYard? For the last 2 weeks, we're having connection problems between the hosts. I haven't used StreamYard in a while. Actually, I did. I used it about 3 weeks ago for an episode of the podcast review show where we review Ask Ralph from Ask Ralph Podcast. And we didn't have a problem. So, I always just recommend, this is where I saw somebody in a Facebook group and they were blaming the guest for having bad audio. And I'm like, okay, I get it that they showed up with no microphone, which here's the thing that drives me nuts. There's a podcast about podcasting and it's all from the advertising industry. Forget the name of the actual show, something like the Media Roundtable. And so these are guys that work in podcasting, and I'm amazed at the number of people that show up with like almost no microphone. I listened today and I was like, you got to be kidding me. So Chris says, I use StreamYard on an average 3 times a day with guests. Not an issue. Definitely reach out to StreamYard and, their help to source the issue. Yeah, I've never had a problem. That's one of the things I like about it. It's simple. It works. It's powerful. That's always interesting.
It does remove, like in Niilo's case, Ecamm is local. So, he's got that older MacBook Air that where StreamYard, they're taking all the processing.
Yeah.
So you're just connecting via web browser. So I'd recommend he's only going to do audio. I'd recommend for him though, if he was going to do video, better to go to StreamYard with his equipment. If you have older equipment, I think better to do StreamYard. If you wanted to use Ecamm, probably going to need to upgrade your I think you're running that on a M1, right? A Mac M1.
Yeah. I'm running this on a Mac Mini with a decent amount of RAM in it. So
no, it works great. The minis are awesome. I'd if I were him, I'd buy an M2 right now. The M2 Mini, the M3. I think the M3 minis will come later this year, but great. The mini is just it should be required for podcasters. It's a really good podcaster. You're using it, Dave. And listen, you're doing what I do. You have Windows and Mac next to each other, right? Have you gotten to that point where you don't even see it anymore? It's just you're like you do what you need to do on it, and you don't even think about what the operating system is.
Well, as he was talking about that, I thought I should start putting like $25 a month away, because the PC's probably 5 years old, and by the time I get $1,000 or so, but most of the stuff I do on the PC is web-based. I think I use Google Docs now more than I do. Like, I really started asking, like, why do I have Microsoft 365? And I was like, well, because I do PowerPoint presentations for, like, Podcast Movement is coming up. So I was like, I guess that's worth whatever it is, $10 a month or something.
I like having both. I like, for me, it's one of those things. If I do get in a spot where I have to have one or the other, I've got them both. There are still a few Mac only things, and there's still a few only Windows only things. And it's nice to be able to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm going to do that on my Windows box.
Yeah.
So it's handy to have both, I think.
Uncle Marv says StreamYard somewhat acknowledged possible issues if you record both video and audio locally for each other. He says, I've been having issues off and on, and asked them about it. So that's
remember, anytime you decide to record locally, you're now at the mercy of the equipment that's on either end. Right?
Yeah.
And so,
and then
buyer beware.
Jeff has a great point. There is a podcasting algorithm. The more rich and famous a person is, the worse their audio and video and tech will be when they show up. That's always amazing. And Chris says, yep, browser-based video will help local resources hogging, but honestly, a 2014 Air for any video is, you're kind of...
that's about the edge. That's the edge of tomorrow. That one, you're kind of coming up on that. But he said, he was really clear, audio only. So you can audio editings in most cases. The application may struggle, but the actual doing the audio processing, not very hard.
Yeah. And then Chris says a Mac Mini is $600 with 8 gigs of RAM. Works so well for all this. I think mine has...
Buy it with more.
I'm going to say, I think I have at least 16. Yeah.
Yeah. Buy it with as much RAM as you can get, because you're not going to upgrade a Mac Mini. So get the Max. The hard drive, you could go cheap on the hard drive if you want, because just depending on how you store your files, if you have some network storage or whatever. But on the Mac side of things, buy absolutely as much RAM as you can afford.
Yeah. Here's a good question that I'm not sure I know the answer. Does an episode have to be marked explicit in Apple Podcasts if the public episode is censored, but the paid version or the paid subscription audio is not? That's a great question. I know if it was, because the whole thing there is I'm paying for the uncensored version, and I know if it's public, free public, you have to, well, you're supposed to. Not everybody does. And I keep finding shows, and I'm not a prude, but man, when you're dropping like 6 to 10 F-bombs per minute, like, get a new adjective, would you? Holy cow. But I honestly don't know. That would be an Apple Podcast question, because I know when you mark even an episode explicit in public, they block the whole show in a lot of things that end in Stan over in the Middle East. There's a bunch of countries.
Dave, what happens if it's explicit and you don't mark it?
I think what it does is if somebody flags it, hey, they said booger, and they tell Apple, then you get in trouble and you have to go to the principal's office and sit under
what does get in trouble mean? What do they, I don't know. I don't know. What do they do? Do you know?
Well, I know if you mark it explicit. So if you say this is explicit, there's like, I'm going to say somewhere between 10 to 15 countries, almost all of them in the Middle East, that will not only block your show, but they will block your, Jim needs some more coffee.
Report. Sarah's down here wanting some coffee.
Yeah, there you go. Well, you got to keep Sarah, hydrated.
Yeah, she's taking all my coffee, but that's okay. There you go.
If you mark something explicit, there's a giant list of shows, a giant list of countries, but they're almost all in the Middle East that will not only block your show, but they will take the whole show in Apple iTunes or Apple Podcast, depending on what you're using, and remove it because they get really bent out of shape if they hear the word booger.
Remove it for that country or
for that country, right? Okay. So it's let me see if I can do this in the chat room because I have a.
I wonder what the stats are on that.
Here's the list of names: Bahrain, Belarus, Brunei, Darussalam, Burkina Faso, Chad, Egypt, India, Jordan, Lebanon, Nepal, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Tunisia, United Arab Emirates, and that's my favorite, Uzbekistan. And Yemen will block you if you have an episode labeled explicit. So if you're trying to reach the Uzbekistan audience, don't say booger or any other words that rhyme with, Schmidt. So.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a list of explicit words?
No, it's besides the George Carlin ones. And I always say,
that's 1,000 years ago.
If you have to ask, then it's explicit. I remember the one guy at Libsyn was talking about the F word, and he was saying something like, yes, but it's an adjective, not a verb. Is that okay? And I was like, yeah, it's you got to just remember, just picture saying that word in front of a Southern Baptist, and that will answer your question. And
you can't say dancing in front of it because dancing leads to sex. So you can't. Actually, it's the other way around. Sex leads to dancing.
Yes. So
I blew that joke. Dang it.
Yeah. That's all right.
All right. Well.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned, did I mention Evernote yet? I know
yeah, we talked a little bit about that.
Well, I didn't mention the outrageous pricing, but what I moved to was this thing called JoyNote. If you go to supportthishow.com/JoyNote, so you can see right now, if you're watching the video, I have it on the screen. It looks and smells a lot like, and it's weird. One of their key ingredients is it is really meant for sharing notes. It's really team-based, and I am an army of one. But my biggest thing that I liked about it is it's not just gray. This sounds so weird, but to me, Notion is just gray. Everything is black and white. I'm like, can we throw in some color? And I love the fact, because I was trying a bunch of different ones, and Evernote is kind of like that scorned lover that like screaming, I want my t-shirt back. They only let you export 100 notes at a time. And then some of these other apps, you could only import a notebook at a time. And I had like 130 notebooks. So I found Notejoy. It's, I want to say $50 a year. I had to go to the Medium program, but it's handy, and that's what I'm using now. Nothing against Apple Notes, but you can see here where our next question is a recipe for disaster. This person said, hey, you all, I recently started a podcast with a friend of mine's. That's what it says. A friend of mine's. And I would like to know some interesting topics we should highlight. This is, to me, always something that I'm just like, if you are struggling with what to talk about, not that you shouldn't start a podcast, maybe you shouldn't start a podcast now. The background of our podcast is the authentic as possible. So I think they mean to be as authentic as possible, while also creating a safe space. We cover current events, culture, sex, experiences, mental health, and a lot more, which is already a lot more. Definitely 18 plus for language, speaking of saying naughty words. It is also important to me that everyone feels included and welcome to our show. So I do not want to make anyone offended. Thank you. And then their hashtags were hashtag help us go far and hashtag help us grow the right way. And so I labeled this note recipe for disaster, because if you're worried about offending people, like we said booger today 3 times, there's somebody that's like, oh, I can't listen to this with the kids in the car. He said booger. And I said something that rhymed. I talked about Schmidt. And they're like, well, if you take the C out of that, that's a naughty word. If you're worried about offending someone, you just forget about it. You can't go to the grocery store without offending someone, because you're standing in line and they're like, oh my gosh, look at that guy. He's so old and he's got SpaghettiOs in his cart. What kind of weirdo eats SpaghettiOs when you're 59? And I'm like, me, when you're in a hurry. So and then we're going to talk about cultural events, culture, sex, experiences, mental health, and a lot more. And on one hand, if the goal is to have fun with your friends in the basement, then by all means do it. But it seemed like they were a little all over the place. I don't know. I don't want to discourage people from starting a podcast. It just seemed like you're a little, smells a little half baked. You might want to put this one back in the oven for a little bit.
We're preaching into the choir, right? I mean, the folks that listen to this show, but
right.
Like if you don't know, don't start a podcast. Just start a Zoom call. Like just do a Zoom call and have those conversations and see if they go anywhere. Try to do 6 of them in a row. And because I think sometimes people think they're funnier than they actually are.
Oh.
2, that this is sustainable. Like the group conversation of just getting around and making jokes and talking about sex and whatever is interesting. And they themselves, after maybe 5 or 6, are like, you know what, I'm busy that night. You know, that's how you know, like say you're doing a show and you got 4 people involved or 3. When one of them starts canceling more than they're there, you've lost your host, right? They're like, this isn't that important to me anymore. So I start a Zoom call, try and do it 4, 5, 6 times in a row. You can still record it if you want.
Right.
But don't get all committed to something like that. It's just not. It's way harder than you think to sustain those kinds of. I think some people think, well, turn on, hit record, it'll be great. It might be. It might not be. It's really hard to sustain that over time, and I think it takes a lot more work. This is where you see on Spotify a bajillion. Is that even a word? A bajillion 2 and done, not 1 and dones.
Oh yeah.
Because the second one is really hard. The first one is fun. This is exciting. Look how fun this is. And then all the editing work or all the post-production work. And that second one, you're like, oh, maybe this isn't as fun as I thought it was going to be. Right. And so you see 2, and then they're kind of gone.
I think a lot of people forget that the goal of a podcast, and in 99% of the thing, is to have someone listen to it. And they forget that someone is listening to this. And it literally is just like a phone call. And your phone calls aren't that now might be to you. Jim, do you have a family inside joke? Like something that
1,000 of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
So is there anyone you could share? Like just say the inside joke so I can show you that I
well, we quote a lot of Monty Python, and so somebody will be like, oh, I'm dead tired, and then somebody will go, I'm not dead yet.
Right.
I'll
give you an example. When I was in probably junior high, early high school, I don't even know where the word came from, but somehow the word shoom meant hello. Oh. And then somebody said mashum, which was like, and good day to you. And we started making up this, because you're a nerdy little high school kid, you started making up our own language. So, and then we had that. Then again, when you're a nerdy little 12-year-old kid, we would come up and we would take our like a fist, but the top of the fist we would stick on your chin, and we would rub it to your chin and go, oh yeah, there you go. Oh, getting a chowbie. But so if I said chowbie to somebody that was in that group, they'd start laughing. If I say chowbie to you, you're like, what's a chowbie?
I wouldn't have any. Have any.
And so that's where you fall into stuff, because you've known this person. And I also sometimes get there's a part of me that, as much as they want to be authentic, all right, I'm just going to turn on the mic and we're going to keep it real. But instead, they turn on the mic and they're like, hey girl, what's up? All right, are you guys ready? And I'm like, wait, that's authentic you, that's transparent. And I'm like, which on one hand is good, because you are realizing people are listening to it, but it just, I don't know. In this example, I just was like, I think we need to go back to the oven a little bit.
And then one more thought on that is, we talk about conflict in the podcast, back to the disaster question that you had. You don't have to be explicit, or you don't even have to be talking about topics that are highly controversial to either offend, or the offending thing is actually much smaller than someone just disagreeing with you. And like, this is what I think a lot of podcasters aren't ready for, is you say, oh, and this actually happens in our chat room all the time, hey, yeah, well, here's a minor example. Yeah, that 2014 Mac should be fine. Then there was a bunch of comments like, don't do it. Don't
Yeah.
video edit on that thing, right? You can take that one of two ways. And some people get I see this in the YouTube space all the time. YouTubers get started, they get a show, they get 50 or 60,000 subscribers, and then the comments start coming. In a couple weeks into their videos, they start trying to justify everything. Oh, I know in the comments I got this, and I know I'm going to say this. I don't want any comments, kind of thing. You're going to get, and again, it's not controversy. It's just disagreement. And you've got to be ready for that kind of, how are you going to handle that? Because for some people, it eats away at them. And then they start getting bitter on their podcast about it. And then it changes the content of what they have. And so you have to be really, really careful not to let your audience drive you to embitter you in this, or to make you angry, or for you to be constantly justifying all of the things that you believe to be true. Hey, it's true for you. Go with it, right?
Right.
I think that's a bigger concern in podcasting than offending. And it is a concern. I mean, there are some that is, but the disagreement thing, man, you got to get past that, and you got to not allow it to affect your content.
Yeah, the chat room's chiming in here. Coach Dave says good stories are built on tension. If you're not offending someone, you're at risk for being bland. Conan O'Brien talked about how they got a report on his ads and how he's not brand safe. And he's like, I've never been brand safe. He's like, that's why people tune in,
Well, remember, there's a difference between disagreeing and offending. Those are two, I think those are two totally different things.
I give you a classic example. I was watching, and we'll come back to this, by the way. Remind me about Daniel's video. But the Hall of Fame thing at the very end, because live, they couldn't get Adam Carolla's video to play. And so in post, they fixed it. There's Adam Carolla's things. Now, Adam took Jesus's name, the full name. I don't want to say it because some people, again, will get offended. He said...
The one that ends in superstar?
Yeah.
That one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He said that 3 times as in a holy cow kind of way. Yeah. And there are some people that will be like, he took the Lord's name in vain, and like be really offended. And I was surprised because that was one that even kind of like, like I didn't like, I'm not listening to him ever again. But I was kind of like, oh, I was surprised. I haven't heard someone just blatantly lay that one out. I was like, oh, that's interesting that kind of like just a bit of a nudge there. So that's one to Adam. That's just his way of saying holy cow. But I could see people like, forget it. So again, that could be offending to some people.
Yeah. And just apologize when you do.
Yeah. Because I don't think anybody does it on purpose. Like, I'm going to offend you right now. Although this Sunday, I'm again filling in for my pastor who's sick, and I'm going to start off the service by singing the Beatles' Help. And, the Beatles did drugs and they did all sorts of stuff. And
you'll be fine.
Then I can't wait.
The Beatles are super popular. Nobody remembers. It's nostalgia now.
Oh,
they don't
trust me. The
were.
Church lady's head is going to explode, and that's why I'm doing it.
You're not playing the drums, though, right? There's not going to be
just a guitar.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine.
And I also found out that no matter what key you put that song in, part of it is going to be out of your range. So thank you, John Lennon. Craig says editing a couple of conversations will be an eye-opener as well. But here's the thing. Most of those people don't edit because they want to keep it real. And I always say a podcast, sure, it's a conversation. It's a conversation with the boring parts removed. And then Coach Dave chimed in again. Of course, many of us here are Gen X. No one from this generation is afraid of a little conflict. We grew up in a live version of Lord of the Flies.
Yes, excellent. We did. Yes, we did.
And then Jeff C comes in for the win. People don't realize creating content is work. It really is. It's it usually just doesn't happen by accident. It takes a little planning, a little helping. So, but yes, that is a good opener. And also the Beatles are so Beatles. Like, it's not a hard song to play until you get to the that part was like, it's very George Harrison in a way. So yeah, there you go. And Chris says maybe Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds. Yeah, that'd be great. I don't think that's going to fit in. Although that one...
Is that the lyric? Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds?
That is a song that was written on 3 different LSD trips, if I remember right. And
I didn't know that was the actual lyric. I knew
that's the name of the picture
But I don't-
yourself in a boat on a river with tangerine dreams and marmalade skies. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Somebody calls you. Okay. Meanwhile, back of the ranch, how we doing on time? Let's thank some people, shall we?
Let's do that.
Yeah. So if you'd like to be an awesome supporter, you can do that. All you got to do is go to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. It's really that easy. And this show is brought to you by the schoolofpodcasting.com. You've got courses, you got coaching, and you got community and a 30-day money-back guarantee, all for under $100 a month. You can use the coupon code and save even more. Check it out, schoolofpodcasting.com. The Ask the Podcast Coach website, it runs on Podpage. If you go to Tripod Page, that's my affiliate link. And if you're like, wait, I want to know more about this, then go to learnpodpage.com. It's a great tool. And I think by the end of the year, the School of Podcasting will actually be on Podpage. I'm sniffing that idea. We talked about Ecamm earlier. If you want to check out Ecamm, you're looking at it right now. If you're watching the video, askthepodcastcoach.com/Ecamm is my affiliate link. And if I can get my mouse to work, if you need more Jim Collison, and hey, who doesn't need more Jim Collison? Look at him. Such a great guy. Then just go over to theaverageguy.tv and check out Home Gadget Geeks. And it's that time. It's time for the Wheel of Names. And before we do that, I do want to give a special shout out to my buddy Craig over at livewellandflourish.com. 100 episodes is a lot of episodes. We talk about it, creating good content is hard. And I saw that today, listened to it last night at Chipotle, listened to episode 100. So he's an awesome supporter. And in fact, you will see here, if I get my Notejoy out of the way, or just bring this up. There we go. The Wheel of Names. So we'll see who's going to be the awesome supporter. And is it me, Jim, or did we start to get more $20 supporters the minute we rolled out the Wheel of Names? For a while there.
I think it does pretty well. You too could have on this and be a part of this madness that we do.
So
$20. Get out there and get it done. Just do it for a month. Try it out.
All right.
You'll like it.
Round and round. First, we'll click on shuffle just so there's if anybody's worried about any shenanigans, we have shuffled the wheel and now we will spin and it goes round and round and it's going to land on, is it Felix? It is Felix. The Latin Podcast Awards. There we go. So if you are of a Latin persuasion and you do a podcast, you should check out the LatinPodcastAwards.com. Felix, for your awesome support. And if you're listening right now and you go, hey, does this show save you some time? Has it saved you money? Has it saved you headaches? Has it kept you educated? And maybe you're using some of this information, and I'm speaking to you, other podcast consultants, that I've saved you time. Maybe you should give some back by going to askthepodcastcoach.com/awesome. But thanks to everyone. Super chats are always appreciated as well. So with that, let me go back. Go ahead.
For those who are giving, through Patreon, it all goes to Dave. So if you don't like me, which is very possible, it all goes to Dave.
How can you not like Jim Collison?
There are some people who don't like me, but that's okay.
Yeah, we were talking.
They can disagree with me.
We were talking earlier about how, it might take more time than you think. And here's a fun one on that topic. We are about 20 episodes into our weekly podcast. And as it's a heavily crafted show, i.e. not a talk show, which I'm not sure what that means, unless they mean it's like an MP. Yeah.
Edited or it's produced.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
I've realized how ambitious being weekly was. And what's the best way to play catch up and get some more shows recorded without forgetting that we exist? So the whole thing is, it sounds like they want to take a break. And so do I divide into seasons and every 12 episodes or so announce we'll be back in X amount of weeks? Yep. B, go fortnightly. And I'm going to admit this. Is that bi-weekly?
I think it's every other week.
So that would be, yeah. So we're avoiding this because it might put off future advertisers, but we only get 400 downloads per episode on average. So that's ages off anyway. That's a really good point. So many people make stuff like, because I'm going to get advertisers. I'm like, the big advertisers, it's less than 10%. And I always sound like I'm anti-ad, but there's that. And then she says, we have a newsletter and socials so we can remind people we have a new episode out. So you could switch if you wanted to go. First of all, this is where I always say, and before we continue on, holy cow, look at this. We have a super chat, which means I get to press this button and make it rain and make it rain and make it okay. Or maybe not make it. There it goes. We're raining money here. Yeah. So this is where I always say, thank you, Jeff, by the way. And I always say record. And this is, I use Toggle, Toggl, because apparently the E was too expensive. And time yourself and see how long it actually takes to make an episode. Not just the exporting the MP3 file at the end. How much time did you spend researching? How much time did you spend editing and all that other fun stuff that makes a podcast? And then say, oh, wow, this took 15 hours to make an episode. Then ask yourself, do I have 15 hours a week to make an to do a podcast? And the answer is no, because the kids have soccer and all this other stuff. Well, then guess what, kiddos? You're not doing a weekly podcast, or you're going to find somebody to help you do that. But that's just not the way it works. So that would be my first thing. And then just realize that maybe it is bi-weekly, or here's another. You're either going to make the show shorter instead of an hour. Maybe it's now 15 minutes, so that would be my first step. And then, so let's say I do have to change my schedule. And this is I think people forget that we can do this. And I guess because you don't see, unless you're watching reruns of Moonlighting from 1987, usually people do not break what they call the fourth wall and talk to the audience, right? You're putting on a show, but in podcasting, you can actually put out an episode and talk directly to your audience and say, hey, just so you know, starting April 1st, this show is going to go to fortnightly or every other week. If you're new to the show, go to mywebsite.com/follow and you can download the entire back catalog. And you don't really need to apologize because they're not paying for it. And if they want more episodes, then say, well, then, here's my Patreon. When I get to $400 a month, I'll start making extra episodes or something like that. But I mean, I don't know. Any thoughts on, in this case, she's trying to figure out how to take a break, but she's also trying to figure out her schedule.
You don't have that many people. Just do it. Like we get too worried about that kind of stuff. No one, for the most part, is, especially when it's that early, is like, oh, they were supposed to put a podcast out on Monday. Unsubscribe. Like, nobody does that. Just relax. You're not that big of a deal yet. It's going to be fine. Take a week off. Go every other week for a while. You don't even have to tell people you're doing that. It's nice to, start the show and say, hey, oh, by the way, Gary, thank you for your super chat there. The chat room's lighting up with super chats. Thank you for doing that. Appreciate that. And again, remember, supporting Dave with that. So, woohoo. So one, it's not that big of a deal. I do like the idea, especially that early in their podcast, in the making of this, they could introduce seasons, and people are figuring out seasons on podcasting. And so make 10 and then take some time off. And while you're taking some time off, you can be banking some content for the next season so that when you get to it, it's not so much work, right? Just make sure you budget it, right? If you're going to do that for a second season, sometimes you make a season and you never come back because you're like, man, that's too much freaking work.
Yeah.
Right. That was just too much work to get it done. So I like both. Hey, tell the audience, hey, this is a lot more than I thought it was going to be. And we're going to go every other week. That would be fine. Or come in and say, hey, we're going to wrap this season up. And you know what? If you didn't say it was going to be seasonal in the beginning, don't worry about it. Just say, I'm learning. This is what we're going to do. And people will be fine with it. I think people are much more graceful giving grace than we give them credit for. Those that don't, you didn't really want them as a listener anyways. And so oh man, well, look at that one, Dave. We got another one at the Ask Ralph podcast.
Holy shnikes.
You guys are on fire today.
AskRalphPodcast.com. Thank you.
Now you have to take me out to lunch for all of this.
Well, That's it. Well,
I guess I got to show up in Ohio.
Here's the thing I am embarrassed to say, because Gary's everywhere. Gary's here every week. Do you know Gary's website? I don't know. Yeah,
I don't have that kind of memory.
Gary, say
Gary,
the name of
your
your show in the, let's give you some plugs here. But
yeah,
because I know
they can't. Yeah, the name of the show. You can't put a link.
Yeah, and I know Jeff is Social Media News Live because I just subscribed to his show. I'm playing with Podorama, and that was the thing. They have an OPML, and then I saw this is where going live comes in handy because I smashed the bell, I liked it, and then I subscribed. So when Jeff goes live on Fridays, it's like, hey, Jeff is going live, and I was like, wait a minute, Jeff, and I was like, oh, when I moved to Podurama, somehow that didn't come across. So look at this. The chat room is just being so kind here. Castahead.net. That's a website I know. That's from Chris Stone. So if you need video help, definitely go over and check out Chris. He is a member of the School of Podcasting that anytime
Chris,
there's this...
You don't have to like me. You don't have to like me. But I appreciate that.
And they're all promoting each other. Yeah, Craig says the Ask Ralph podcast is great. Yeah, if you need tax, in fact, Ralph, it's official. I'm bringing you on the School of Podcasting to ask you a bunch of tax questions. I thought about that this morning. I was like, why am I not bringing Ralph on? We just have to figure out, we'll have to do the old, he's an accountant, he's not your accountant. Be sure to consult somebody in your area. But meanwhile, getting back to taking a break.
And Jeff C. is going to be on Home Gadget Geeks this Thursday.
Oh, well, there you go.
He's joining me. So, by the way, if you have a tech topic you want to talk about, I'm always taking guests. So podcasters are easy to do. Jim at theaverageguy.tv if you're interested. Jeff's going to join me on Thursday.
Yeah. Gary is the Small Business Matters podcast. So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he says,
Man,
Jeff,
you guys are rocking it today.
Yeah, Jeff shows on Friday is excellent. It is. It's really good. And that's one that was here's when you know you have a good show, because the minute I saw Jeff's name, I was like, oh man, wait a minute. And so I've been playing with a bunch of these different apps. I'm trying to find which is kind of funny. I'm trying to find the perfect replacement for Google Podcasts, which is weird because I'm spending a lot of time on this for 3% of my audience, if I'm lucky. But I have yet to find the perfect one because the thing I love about Podurama is they have, here's all these shows that I listen to, but I can come over here and click on, let's see, health. And this is an automated, so there's Primal, I forget the name of that show, but there's this new doctor guy that I just found. So it's smart playlists. I have a politics one, so there's no agenda. Here's my marketing playlist. But they also have, if you're a Q person, which is what I just started doing because I have so many different shows. But the thing I love, if you want to upload, somebody gave me Tim Ferriss's podcast, they're like, this is good. So I downloaded the episode and then uploaded it here, and I can listen to it there. It's pretty handy. And they have the bookmark thing, so you can see here where I have. And I love the fact that I can go to the show and click right on where I made a bookmark. So it's a lot like Audible that way. So I love it, except for one thing. A, they support chapters, but not podcasting 2.0 chapters, and they don't do any Bitcoin streaming. And I was like, oh, and I've emailed them like, can you guys look at the Get Alby thing? That would be really cool. So they're like, I will look at it, but I don't know. It's pretty. And the other thing I love about it, they are iOS and their Android and their website version. Here's the thing that I was like this week that I was like, that's cool. Is I was listening to Conan O'Brien. This is the other thing I love. I can go into this app and say, start Conan at 9 minutes because I'm tired of hearing him berate his staff. It drives me nuts. And then he finally gets to the person. So I love that feature. But their web-based version, I was listening to it because I like it because that wouldn't have to tie my phone into the Bluetooth and then the next time into my Rodecaster and then the next time in the kitchen I'm on a phone call. All of a sudden, the person I'm talking to on the phone comes out of my office. That drives me nuts. So I can listen on my computer, and I literally stopped in the middle of Conan laughing, grabbed my phone, went to the kitchen to make my breakfast, hit play, and it picked up literally mid-laugh. So I don't know how they're syncing, but I was like, that's almost instantly. So, but did we get yet another super chat?
A couple more. Big thanks to Uncle Marv checking in. He says, I can't be left out. And so Uncle Marv jumping in. And then Coach Dave says, it's always good Saturday AM hanging out with Dave and Jim, the awesome chat room every week. Cheers. So thank you both, Uncle Marv and Coach Dave, for jumping. Man, you guys are super generous this morning. I was going to leave early. I'm kind of glad I stayed around to see this. This is awesome. You guys are fantastic. Thanks for your generosity, though, by the way. I appreciate that.
Yes.
Thank you for doing that.
And Uncle Marv and Coach Dave, if you guys could say the name of your show in the chat, I'll be happy to.
Well, IT Business Podcast is Uncle Marv. He was on my show about 3 weeks ago. He's an awesome tech dude, and I don't know Coach Dave. So, Coach Dave, throw your.
I know he had a soccer thing for a while, hence the coach part.
What's the current one, or which one do you want to promote in there? Yeah. Always good. Throw those in the super chat too. For anybody else doing that, put the name of your podcast in the super chat too, so we see it.
Here's a fun question, and this I think is going to come up more frequently. Is guest doesn't want to go on video. How do I make it look okay? I have a guest who's willing to come on my podcast, but it doesn't want to be on video, which is fine. But I put a big focus on YouTube, and most of my promotion is through Reels. I record through riverside.fm, and any suggestions on how I can still make it look okay if he's got his camera off, I, the host, will still be on camera. So any thoughts on this one, Jim? Because I had one that's probably not going to be popular.
I was super distracted by Todd the Gator checking in. $20 in a super chat. He says, credit where credit is due. You create great value for the podcasting community. I love this, by the way. And then Craig, live well and flourish, throwing 20 into the mix.
Holy
this
cow.
Is starting to feel like a revival. Like, who else is coming down? As you were. What's the name of the song we would play? And people, I am.
Oh yeah, just
one more time. If anybody wants to come to the altar or give a super chat,
I feel like I'm waiting for Ed McMahon to let's go to the tally board, like I'm on Jerry Lewis, And
then John Spencer checking, and he's up in it for $22. Just had to be the odd one out. LOL, no podcast yet, but both an awesome supporter and in the school of podcasting. I appreciate both Dave and Jim. John, thanks for that. That's super nice. You guys are rocking. Dave, you feel special?
I do feel special. I feel warm and tingly. I feel
get that Mac M3 is what Gary.
I feel my Windows slowly getting paid off. So
nice. Yeah, that's super. Okay. I
totally forgot. Yeah, we have a guest that won't come on video, and so the person said, "Well, you can turn your camera off," but the line that threw me was, "I've put a big focus on YouTube, and I'm going to promote through Reels. So how can I still make it look okay?"
Yeah, just make a graphic for it, especially on.
That's not a bad idea.
You can just make a graphic and put something there, and I would definitely use the feature that puts the words in as they're saying it, so it gives them something to look at. You know what I'm talking about, where it transcribes it transcribes it on the.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah. You don't need to have the video. You can just add a graphic in there. In fact, you could have Mark make a really nice image for you to put behind that, and then put the words on top of it.
And Todd the Gator show, that one I know, is Guardian Downcast. So thank you, Mr. Gator.
Yeah, and Terribly Nerdy with John Moons is checking in with a $20.
That's another awesome supporter.
Always a good show. So Terribly Nerdy. I like that. Terribly Nerdy.
Terribly, not just nerdy, terribly nerdy.
Is that a tech show?
I would think so.
Is that, maybe that'd be a nice one. Maybe there's an interview there on Home Gadget Geeks that could be done or something like that, But not being overtly recruiting here, but you never know.
Well, the thing you might keep in mind of this person that doesn't want to turn on their video is if it was.
Oh, yeah, we have a subject.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, no, that's all right.
Sorry.
Well, hey, anytime somebody's throwing money at me, you can distract me. That's always a beautiful thing.
Yeah, right on.
But if they don't want to come on, and the part that made me twinge is I'm really putting a lot of focus on YouTube. Well, we've all kind of said that the static image on YouTube doesn't work as well. Maybe not have this person on. Maybe. And look, this is what I do now. If you don't want to come on video, that's fine. But if it's, Quincy Jones, or like I remember Rob Walsh got to interview Quincy Jones, and he said, yeah, I normally don't do people over the phone, but it was Quincy Jones. So he's like, I will take the phone call. Chris says creating audiograms on vertical for shorts is mostly a waste of time. Recorded video of yourself talking, use captions like Jim said. Yep. Yeah, because it's just going to be tough. Coach Dave says a good strategy also helps to convey the nonverbal cues. I usually record double ender video, but only use the audio unless we're doing a webinar. So, yeah, so we're to, Gary says, wait a minute, he had an answer. Jeff says if they want to be on the show, there are some requirements that they need to follow. If they don't turn on the camera, they can't be on the show. See, that's me. I'm like, if I'm a video guy, yeah. So that might be the case. So that is something.
Would you allow someone to come on as an avatar? Zoom has a video avatar that you can create for yourself that the lips move when you're talking, but it's definitely a cartoon, right?
Oh, they could, if they could be like a cat, that'd be great.
Yeah. Well, would you allow that? What if that's what they're most comfortable with?
It's going to be, there's a line there. So because there's a thing in Zoom where you can make yourself a cat, I believe. And if what they look like distracts so much from what they're saying, then I'm going to be like, no. But if it's, because I think the only person I would let do that would be Jack from the Darknet Diaries, who has had stalkers and basically is very private. Because he used to do a video and people did some sort of Google tool that they could identify the building out his window and then figured out where he lived, because he does a show about hacking. So those guys can be a little harsh, a little over the line a bit. Yeah. So I think, as always, it depends. And if Jack wants to come on my show and I'm doing video, I would let Jack, because the last time I talked to him, which was years ago, he was getting like hundreds of thousands of downloads an episode and kind of didn't want to talk about it. He was super humble. He's like, I'm like, dude, you're getting hundreds of thousands of downloads. This, you could also do this, I guess. You could put a black line across their eyes and just tell them not to move. Yes. And Jeff said, I saw a photo of Dave in the bathtub podcasting. Would you allow that on your show? So I was in the Bronx at an event, and they didn't have a table. There's usually like a place, and I had to do a webinar, and I was like, well, okay. And there was this thing that went across the bathtub, this little almost like a table kind of thing, but it was for soap and things like that. So I just put my laptop on that and then hung out in the bathtub. I was also about 30 pounds lighter. When I saw that picture, I was like, I got to lose some weight. So, Chris says we had a celebrity that agreed to be on an interview, but wasn't in a place where they were comfortable with cell service and called in. So he created an avatar in the post. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that can work in some cases. Just put a face up there or something, for somebody to look at.
Yeah.
That could be sometimes. I mean, not everybody, especially on YouTube, is interested in talking heads. And so they may just want to listen. They may want to put it on their phone and listen. May not be as bad as you think it is. I do it anyways, and then make a determination on how I'm going to use this after the fact. Because you may get gold. To say no right off the bat, like to just rule it out. I mean, if that's what you choose to do, that's fine. I mean, no judgment there. But I may try it and just kind of say, what do we get out of this?
And then you could have them sound like this. All right, I'm not, whatever.
That's not annoying at all.
That's it. Put a blindfold over them so we can't see that.
I don't know.
You sound like a Gua'uld from Stargate. That's what you sound like.
Eject the torpedo firing thing now. Laser. Pew, pew, pew.
All right. Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
But that's
SP. That was for you.
Yeah, that's it. And I think in the end, it's going to be up to you. Try it, right? It might, if it doesn't look good. And then I think the thing I would avoid is, hey, on today's show, the guest didn't want to be on video. So when you see them talking, I'm sorry, don't apologize for it. I think people will figure it out. And if you want to put a disclaimer, maybe do it at the end. I don't know. That's a good one. Because if you don't do a disclaimer, then people are going to go, wait, what's up with the video?
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I just wouldn't apologize. I would just say, hey, today's guest, we had a situation where their camera wasn't on.
They requested.
Let's make them. Let's throw them under the bus. They requested.
No. I don't think that's throwing them under the bus. In this episode, our guest requested that we not show video. We haven't done that for this episode. Just so you're aware, let's get started. That way, nobody feels awkward. Like the whole time, they're like, "Why is there no video?"
Right.
If they're watching it. So, no, I think you could say that right up front and before you dive into the interview or whatever, just so people get comfortable with it.
Yeah, that would work. I always hate when people. In fact, I started off, I think 2 episodes ago with an apology, but I owed somebody an apology because I did the question of the month, and then for whatever reason, it did not make it to me, but he submitted it. And I was like, oops. And then I said, it'll be in the next episode. And then it wasn't. And I was like, oh, now I owe the guy 2 apologies. Speaking of that, as we get ready to round up, it would be cool if I had one more answer. So Jim, I'm going to ask you the question of the month.
Yeah.
And that is, people say it's harder to grow a podcast now than it was, say, 5-10 years ago. So the question is, which category are you in? Are you a person that's looking for more podcasts? Or are you, I've got my stable of podcasts and I'm good? Or are you option number 3, I already have way too many podcasts to listen to?
Well, first, not any harder, just different problems.
Yeah.
But second, I'm the kind of person that I've got as many as I need. I'm not looking right now. If I get a solid recommendation, I'll go have a listen, but I'm not actively looking for new podcasts.
Yeah, because I know when Jeff's came up, I was like, ooh, I need to add this to my level 1 rotation. This is something that when it comes out, I want to listen to. And there are other podcasts about podcasting that are fine. It's not something that I want. Like Jeff, I want to stop and take notes. Like he has really good guests and he's a really good interviewer and he has a great community. And I was like, oh, I got to get him into the rotation. And so I listened to one. It was a new person. And again, wasn't horrible, but it wasn't anything that made me want to take notes. A lot of it was about joining her membership, a little bit, a little over pitching maybe. And look, you got to eat, so you got to ask, but you don't have to ask every 3 minutes. So, but at any rate, wow, did that go fast today?
Yeah, it was good.
We had a whole weird making rain segment in the middle that we're...
Yeah, but you know what? Big thanks to everybody who gave today. I mean, I appreciate it. I appreciate Dave, and I'm glad that you guys appreciate him too. So thanks for doing that.
Appreciate it. Yeah. So, Jim, anything exciting besides trees coming up on theaverageguy.tv?
It's always exciting on Home Gadget Geeks. We had Gavin Campbell from HomeTech.fm. We talked a little bit about Matter, which is a platform in home automation that's kind of getting popular. They're trying to unify all the home automation standards in some way think of it like a USB or podcasting 2.0. And so we spent a little time talking about that. Gavin's super funny, so we laughed a lot. It's available a little bit later today or tonight. The tree cutting thing got in my way, but in producing it, but it'll be out at theaverageguy.tv.
And as we wrap up, Chris had a great point here. He says, never apologize and always make the guests look great in spite of the issue. Absolutely, hands down. On the School of Podcasting, I will be doing the question of the month, which is the question you just heard. So I think that gives me 5 answers now. So that'll be coming up. And I'll be talking a little bit about... No, I'm not. I was going to talk a little bit about Podcasting 2.0, but that's the question of the month for March. If you go to schoolofpodcasting.com/question, and we're just asking what do you know about it? What do you think about it? So that'll be in the future. So I got a couple things. I might talk about Evernote again in the School of Podcasting. And there are some lessons there that you can learn from a podcasting standpoint. But we thanks again to Mark over at podcastbranding.co, Dan over at basedonatruestorypodcast.com. And thanks to the awesome chat room today. It really does make me feel warm and fuzzy. And I will put up, I have a cute little button now that comes up and says,
I like that.
Click the bell and that whole 9 yards. And we deeply appreciate it. Jim, good luck with your tree.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm going to go cut some wood.
That's it. And everybody have a great weekend. We will see you next week with another fun-filled episode of Ask the Podcast Coach.